right here on sportsbookreview.com. We're down 3 games and looks like down a few extra games today. Let me bring in my co-host, Jason Radowitz. Jason, an interesting weekend for sure, including some huge news that came in just this morning alone.
Yeah, before we go into all the COVID issues, it was a great first weekend of baseball. I think we saw a lot of aggressiveness from hitters, really some bad base running, some poor fielding. So you could tell that spring training 2.0 wasn't really spring training 1.0, where they didn't have much time to really get accustomed to things. And of course, now we're seeing a lot of injuries as well, with Verlander being potentially out for the entire season. A lot of information throughout the entire weekend. A nuts week for baseball, but yeah, let's see what happens in the future.
No, it's certainly crazy. And by the way, I have to say out there, people are tuning in right now on Facebook, most likely on YouTube as well. We had a lot of awesome responses over the weekend. So thank you for tuning in last week when we opened up on Thursday and Friday. If you haven't done so yet, you pop in the chat box. You see me and Jason going live. Hit that subscribe button just below on the red button, and also the notification bell that'll get you delivered information directly when Jason and I go live on the MLB show. But we can't say it enough. The reason why we do those shows, obviously, is me and Jason like to talk baseball, but more importantly, we like to get involved in the chat box and have a lot of fun. You see right now, not a studio show today. Me and Jason working through some audio issues. We're going to bring the pain today and certainly have some fun and go over some information. But I do want to get back to what took place this morning just for a few moments here. If you guys haven't checked out yet, 2 baseball games were canceled already today. The Philadelphia Phillies and the New York Yankees, one I was looking forward to. And then also the Orioles and the Miami Marlins. We don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of days, but it looks like, Jason, Major League Baseball is going to fight through opposite of those 2 games unless other issues pop up. It's interesting. Look, as a baseball fan and guys that we do content, it's kind of hard to look at this because sometimes we feel like we're teetering on the edge of another shutdown, which you hope doesn't happen. But Jason, just talk maybe a couple thoughts on what you're thinking coming out of this with the COVID virus hitting the Marlins here.
Yeah, this is brutal. We going in, we knew that this could potentially happen, but you don't think about it until it does happen. You're hoping in that 101-page protocol that the MLB wrote, you're hoping that they had something in place where if this does happen, they have guidelines, different things that they'll follow so that they can continue to play baseball. So I know that they're in a meeting starting at 12:30. I don't know if that's concluded or if there's information already out there that they've already completed that meeting, but hoping that we can continue to play some baseball because we've been through this entire pandemic for so long. Finally get the MLB back, and you and I and creators and everyone involved in baseball, and we're all suffering without sports, and we're losing jobs, and that's the worst thing possible.
Yeah, at SBR, me, Max, and Flash had a nice college basketball show going, ready to kick it off, Jason, heading into March Madness, and it's shut down. And now we have a great show started off here in Major League Baseball. I'm enjoying all the time I'm spending with you here, and I would hate to see it end. So let's hope, put out the good juju vibes out there that says, you know what, let's pull through this and we'll have some fun because, by the way, we got 8 games left on the card today. Why don't we dip right into it and see what happens and hopefully be able to predict what happens in these games. 9:01, 9:02. We're going to start off with the Angels and the Oakland Athletics finishing up their series. If we take a look at some betting factors here, about a 50-50 betting split coming in on those tickets. But if we take a look, it's fairly even here. Opened up, Jason, offshore at SBRodds.com at -117, -125, depending on where you're shopping at, and staying in that same range right around the pick 'em. If we look at the total here, opened up at 9, similarly staying around 9. Canning is on the mound today. Last year, if we're going just by stats, obviously we don't have anything to work off of this year with the pitchers, a 4.75 xFIP. And then if we take a look at Oakland, 4.61 xFIP for Bassett starting out there today. We saw some runs yesterday. We even saw one of the crazier games, Jason. I saw you late at night watching the Oakland Athletics walk off with a grand slam. Are we going to get runs today? And what can we expect out there in Oakland?
Yeah, it's interesting. The Athletics now up 2-1 in the series, going for the 4th game and trying to win the series 3-1. Chris Bassett on the mound, like you said, he was 10-5 last season with a 3.81 ERA. But if you go deeper into his stats, he had a 3.01 ERA in 11 starts last season at home, 6-2 in those games. Also 7-2 in 12 games started with a batting average of .210 in the daytime. So day games and at home, he was really special, really great pitcher. And he broke out last season, so you expect him to come back and perform again this year. Look at Griffin Canning, another guy that's a breakout potential, player. He dealt with the elbow injury in spring training 1.0. In his exhibition game, he had 6 scoreless innings. It looked pretty good in that game, but he had a 4.30 ERA on the road through 7 games. He went 1-4 in those games. Also struggled a little bit against righties with a 263 batting average and an over 300 OBP. And the A's, they have plenty of power from the right side, including Ramon Laureano, who is 4-6 with 2 home runs and 3 RBIs versus Canning. So my official play on this one will be the Oakland Athletics. Excited to get that game going. And if we see that game going early on, then I think we'll know that we're going to see baseball later on today, too.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It should be a good indicator. 3:40 Eastern time, so we get that one right off the bat. Also, Jason, real quick, because sometimes these things come up during the season, which we don't get to touch on or maybe not asked about in the chat box, but it comes up right away. You brought up a good point here. When you take a look at Oakland playing in the day out there also, because at night games, it's the Bay Area. It tends to get cooler out there, 55 degrees, maybe even colder than that, even in the summertime temperatures. We're looking this afternoon, Jason, a high of 68 degrees, 9-mile-an-hour wind blowing out. Does that affect the bats for you? Do you take a look at that, or how do you approach the day and the night games out there on the West Coast?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely look at the speeds. You can look at the wind. You can look at the temperature. But for me, I think it's mainly just looking at how these pitchers have performed in the past against these batters. At the end of the day, if they can't touch you, then it's not going to matter where the wind's coming out. Obviously, if there's sun in the batter's eyes, during the day, that could help the pitchers, of course. But if the ball's in play, it might help the hitters as well because the fielders can't see the ball. So there's a lot of different factors that I think it can go either way, pros and cons for both sides. So I don't look into it too much, but of course, if there's something that really stands out, you definitely make a play off of, something like that.
Sure. Why don't we keep it out on the West Coast? And how about this? We had a 3:40 Eastern time start. Now we're going to have a 4:10 Eastern time start still out on the West Coast in the NL West. It's going to be Arizona and San Diego. Weaver and Lucchesi on the mound today. Line opened up here around that 130 range. Actually, Pinnacle and also Chris opened up offshore at SBRodds.com, both at -131. Jason, that's come down a little bit. We're seeing Pinnacle at -124, Chris at -123, 5 Dimes at -110, and also a big move here at some outlets here on the total, opening up offshore at 7.5. Now we're seeing 8.5s across the board. If we take a look at some pitching statistics from last year, Weaver comes into this game off of last year, 3.87 xFIP, and Lucchesi at 4.36 xFIP. He's got a lot of talent. The lefty on San Diego can work up some strikeouts, but that's interesting to see a ballpark not notoriously known for lighting it up go from 7.5, Jason, to 8.5 here.
Yeah, this is a great pitching matchup. And, even yesterday I had the under in the first 5 innings with the pitching matchup yesterday in this game. And the pitching matchup is really good in this game as well. I think there's 2 solid pitchers, not just Lucchesi, but also Weaver. In his 12 games started last season, he had a 2.94 ERA and a 3.07 FIP. He walked under 2 batters per 9 innings and allowed just 0.84 home runs per 9 innings. So he was really good last season as well. And I think he's a potential player to break out as well if he can stay healthy, of course. So Padres back. They performed okay against Weaver. Machado has the home run. So look at Machado to maybe perform in this one. Lucchesi was solid at home with an 8-4 record with a 2.56 ERA. Held opponents to just 183 batting average at home. Started 1 game versus Arizona last season. He went 5 innings, so had 4 hits, no runs, 6 strikeouts, and 1 walk. So Lucchesi has some success against the Diamondbacks from last season. So at home, I think I would go with the Padres. It's around -120, almost a pick 'em. I like the Padres in this one at home, and then I'd even look at under 8.5. I like that has grown up a run because I do believe this game will go under. But we should bring up though, Eric Hosmer and the Padres bats have been impressive to start the season. The lineup has been really good. That's something the Padres haven't really been able to have, or their fans haven't been able to experience in quite some time from the Padres. So that Padres offense, Hosmer, one of the guys leading up in the RBI total. You got Machado, you have Tatis. It's a great offensive lineup with Pham in there as well. So, it's an interesting team for the Padres. If they can keep up with their hitting and their pitching is very solid with young talent too.
I agree with you on the Padres because also what you take a look at, too, you say some of the bats are hot there. Let's not forget yesterday, Tommy Pham hit a couple really rocket shots out there that were robbed with great defense. Yeah. So certainly even more, it's an interesting game to try to take a look at. I've always been a proponent of Lucchesi. I like a guy who has the ability to have electric stuff with strikeouts and certainly be able to move the needle. But I think it's a fair price for a home team, -123, -120 in that range. I do. Let's get on to some other topics here. But before we do that, again, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please feel free to do so. We're doing big things here at sportsbook.com, not just in Major League League Baseball with me and Jason. There's, the basketball channels are starting up. Jamming with Jay Money's back in flow. Also, Flashing the Boys, creating soccer. Lee Martin behind the scenes. A lot of good stuff is going on here. So when you hit that notification bell, sometimes you're like, hey, it's not Jason and Donnie right here. It's a lot more extra good content from everybody else here on the networks doing some really good things. Let's keep it moving here. Plenty of time in the show. We'll get all of these games, as Jason and I will do. We'll hit some of the games that we have mapped out, but also we'll open it up to the chat box and get after it. Chris Richardson said Weaver was terrible with the Angels, lost his velocity. Little D, San Diego might take the W today. And Abel Alvarez, I think it says I like first 5 innings on the Padres game. So some really good stuff coming from the chat box. Why don't we flip it over to a hot Washington slate today, Jason? Thornton and Sanchez on the mound. That's rotation 905, 906. That is the Toronto Blue Jays and the Washington Nationals. If we take a look at some line movement out here, heavy betting coming in on the Washington Nationals, but we got your classic line reversal with some movement. Pinnacle opened up, Jason offshore, minus 141. How about Chris at SBRodds.com? Minus 165. We're now seeing minus 113s across the board. Are you buying the hype here with this line moving with Toronto? The one thing I do like here, Jason, it's hitting weather down in Washington. I think those bats might be able to get going today.
Yeah, but you know what? The number is 10 right now on the over-under, and it's kind of high for both of these offenses. But yeah, no, the Nationals with Anibal Sanchez on the mound. Sanchez, he's just a guy that will, he seems to always pound the strike zone, always find, his gets balls in play and not such hard contact. Although he did have 3.14 walks per 9 innings. Thornton, on the other hand, had 3.56 walks per 9 innings. So looking at a game with maybe a ton of walks and, guys with FIPs, near 5, which is, pretty concerning. And that's why the over-under is 10. Thornton had a whip of 1.41 last season through 154 innings of work. He was worse on the road with a batting average of almost 270 and an ERA of 4.83. Washington hasn't faced Thornton, but Thornton struggled versus righties, like I said, and they're righty heavy with their power bats for the most part, outside of Thames. But then you have Sanchez. He's dominated righties a lot more compared to Thornton. He held them to 226 batting average, and the Jays also have a heavy righty lineup as well. He had a whip of just 1.27, which was 25th best in the league, and a 3.85 ERA last season, which was 27th best in the league. So Sanchez, he's not the best pitcher, but he's definitely average, and I think average is better than what Thornton is, and I think Thornton's a little bit below average. So with Nationals at home, they didn't have to travel anywhere. They have to stay at home. I like the Nationals here at minus 130, especially for a game that's a little bit, it's not the night. It's like a little bit towards the daytime to start off. So yeah, I would look at the Nationals at minus 130. They don't have to move.
Yeah, also keep in mind, the line opened up at 10. We're now seeing offshore at SBRodds.com here, Jason, 10.5. So that number is rising. 94 degrees down in Washington with the wind blowing out. Another interesting topic to bring up, because when we look at the pitchers and we go off of last year's statistics, both of these guys should be able to get hit. Now, again, in the National League, we do have the DH, so you have the extra bat in the lineup. But it's interesting because coming off the first 3-game set for both of these teams, they only scored 12 combined runs apiece. So it's one of those where you expected. Now, theoretically, if it's 10, both teams are supposed to hit 5 runs here. When you take a look at heading into a new series where maybe the pitching isn't up to par from what it previously was, does that give you a bump, Jason? You say, you know what? I go with my feel and I go with what the numbers tell me here.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with what you're saying. And, at the end of the day, for me, starting now, starting with like the first week of the season, it's going to be really hard for me to take an over-under above a double-digit score. Just because right now it just seems like hitters are just way too aggressive at the plate. They're also making some boneheaded mistakes on the base path. So for me, yeah, there's a lot of factors that can go in it. But that's why for this game I'm just going to be staying away from it. I think it's a close game. I think it'll be a fun game, especially watching the Nationals as a National League team playing an AL team like the Blue Jays. So it's going to be a fun game. But for me, yeah, it's a stay away for me.
Yeah, I look forward to see what Toronto does this year. Obviously, a lot of young talent on that baseball squad. I know last week a lot of people in the chat box were bringing up like, hey, how about Toronto going down to Tampa Bay, maybe looking at a first 5? Well, the value is gone there. It would have been really nice if you said, hey, we already jumped on the train and got plus 135 earlier today, which obviously isn't going to be the case. But just overall taking a look at this number, maybe Toronto first 5 might be a play where you say both pitchers not really up to par. I'm going to take the plus money and we'll see what we have maybe with the bigger bats, because until Soto gets back in that Washington National lineup, there's a lot to be desired in that game. But an interesting game for sure. That also a 6:05 start Eastern time. So a lot of these games, keep in mind, people, don't wait till you get home from work. Don't wait till you sit down on your desk or whatever when you get home on the couch. A lot of these games are getting off before 7 o'clock tonight. Let's keep it going here. 9:07, 9:08. One of the games I like today, the Chicago Cubs and the Cincinnati Reds, Lester and Miley, the battle of two left-handed pitchers. Betting coming in pretty much even. If we're taking a look, though, here, Pinnacle opened up offshore about a pick 'em. Chris was a little bit higher, Jason, at -120. But now we're seeing that completely flip around from the favorite being Cincinnati over to the Cubs. And I got to say, Jason, I actually agree with this line movement. And we do bankers at the end of the show, best bets, but this is one I have my eye on. I really like the team total for the Chicago Cubs today, sitting at 4.5. I think they can get 5 runs. And again, as we like to say, it's hitting weather there. Two pitchers that weren't great last year, 93 degrees, wind blowing out to left in a hitter's ballpark. I think the Cubs can get there, Jason, with 5 today. How about you?
That's interesting you say that, because I'm actually on the other side for the team total, which I was going to think the Reds on the over at 4.5. So if you guys hear that, so Donnie's on the Cubs, I'm on the Reds. So I think our base are combined. Over. Yeah, exactly. So the combined over would probably be the play for both of us. For me, Lester, he's just been regressing a lot recently in the last 2 seasons. Nick Castellanos, he's 7-12 with 3 home runs, 8 RBIs. Eugenio Suarez, 16 for 42 with 6 home runs and 12 RBIs. Lester Sierra has been just atrocious in the last 2. Highest in his career last season. His hard contact rate is up as well. So he scares me a lot. And, the Reds have some big right-handed bats in that lineup. However, just know the Reds might be having that COVID around them. So look at the lineup before you actually take this Reds team total over. Make sure that Suarez and Castellanos are in the lineup. But yeah, those righties have destroyed Lester in the past. Miley, he was in Houston last season. He was dominant versus lefties, so you're not going to see much, from lefties like Rizzo, Hayward, Schwarber, or the Cubs. That's why I would lean towards the Reds in this matchup. Cubs batters are just hitting 224 versus Miley. But again, Chris Bryant, one of the guys on the Cubs on the other side of the plate, he's gone 6-4 versus Miley in this year as a home run, but does have 6 strikeouts. I just think that there's value with the Reds. This game it's definitely a pick 'em. That's why I like the over. And the over in the game sounds really good as well. But I think that the Reds team total 4.5 is my play.
Another interesting one, too, because we take a look at the betting and what we see, like some of these new rules that are coming into play. This is one of those classics, Jason, where you get the 3-3 game after 9 innings. It can very easily turn into a 9-8 type of game, especially with the 2 type of bats that they have on each side, the runner on second base, and also obviously the wind blowing out in some hot conditions. So that should be an interesting one to watch. Let's take a look at some things in the chat box here. Little D says, I like Miley better than Lester in this game. Abdul Average coming in saying the consensus on the Cubs close to 60%. And if we take a look here, the Reds are dealing with COVID issues too, DX Fowler. So right on the points that you're talking about there, Jason, in this one. Little D also says, I'll go with Miley 4.0 today. I guess that means the strikeouts. Actually, question in the chat box also. Alex says, Lester over 4.5 Ks today. Do you think, Jason, he might be able to get the 5 Ks or better in this one?
I think what we've seen early is we've seen a lot of strikeouts and a lot of guys that are just kind of swinging at, things in the dirt, things upstairs, things inside, outside, away from the plate, on the plate. Doesn't matter. I think any strikeout total below maybe 5 is a play in the MLB right now with how the hitters are hitting. They're kind of swinging for power, swinging aggressively. Pitchers getting ahead of it in counts early in these games. And I think we've seen a lot of pitchers that don't normally average that many strikeouts, getting a bunch of strikeouts early in these games. Where we saw, I think there was one pitcher maybe a couple of days ago who had a 2.5 strikeouts and got 3 in the first 2 innings and hit it in 2 innings. So yeah, I would definitely agree with taking strikeouts for any of these pitchers. Just make sure that they don't have any innings limit or pitches limit. I don't think Lester or Miley do, so I think you'll be good there. But for other pitchers, just make sure, because we've seen a lot of pitchers who are either getting injured or other pitchers are pitching innings limit or just a pitches limit in general. So yeah, make sure that they're going to go long enough they don't have a limit before you put on over for strikeout total.
Alex Coulter III says first 5 in every game today's going for. And I do want to thank you guys. Over 233 people watching live right now in the chat box. A lot more going to watch. Also going through with the replay. We do thank you for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it here. But one of those few games where me and Jason, located in New Jersey, will be cheering every run that crosses the plate, regardless of what team actually scores it today. We'll have some fun with that game. The next game we're going to talk about here is one of those that you don't really scratch your head on. And I know a lot of people open up their odds and say it's a little bit high, but I think most people are probably on the same page in this game, which is the way they think. 9-13, 9-14, Milwaukee and Pittsburgh. Adrian Hauser on the mound versus Stephen Brault, the lefty. Heavy betting action towards Milwaukee in this game. If we take a look at where the line opened, keep in mind also, folks, this is a road team going in. Opened up offshore at SBRodds.com, -128, -135. We're now sitting some places as high. If we take a look at -175 at Chris, that line has really moved. If we look at the totals across the board, it opened up at 9. That also rising to 9.5. Again, a lot of hitting weather cities across the country where you're going to see some of these spikes. The problem I have is when you look overall at the Pittsburgh Pirates, yeah, they won a game, but the lineup leaves a lot to be desired. It just looks too easy. And, sometimes when we look at stuff there, Jason, that's too easy. It doesn't produce. But I don't know too many people are going, you know what? Pittsburgh's going to be my play today.
The funny thing is, on my Twitter, I had told people that, you know what, Pittsburgh might actually get the upset yesterday. I told people to watch out because of the Cardinals with Dakota Hudson on the mound, who had a really high FIP all last season. So not that Hudson pitched that poorly, but the Pirates did get the win. But yeah, in this one, if you look at the XFIPs, Hauser had a 3.6 XFIP, and Brault had a 5.04 XFIP. That's a big difference between these two pitchers. So, like, if you're looking at a 3.5 to 3.8 FIP in that mix, that's above average in the MLB. So Hauser with an FIP of 3.6, an XFIP of 3.6, that's above average, and that should be talked about. He had a 3.72 ERA last season through 111.1 innings, 9.46 strikeouts per 9 innings, and walked a little bit under 3 batters per 9 innings as well. Hauser was pretty solid against righties, just batted .217 against him last season. Brault, on the other hand, walked over 4 batters per 9 innings last season. He also faced Milwaukee 5 times last season. Didn't play that poorly, but didn't win a game either. 0-1. In those 5 games, so didn't get a win, but had a lot of no decisions, but still didn't get any wins. So I like the Brewers here at -145, also as an official play. I look at over 9.5 as well. I do think the Brewers bats come alive in this one. Both teams start the season 1-2. I think the Brewers definitely have an edge in this series, and I definitely think they'll win the series. So getting the first game out of the way will be huge.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that in both ways. And even if you wanted to take a look, instead of taking a full game, taking like maybe a run line first 5 wager, because you have to figure if Milwaukee's going to jump out, they're probably going to jump out on Brault, get 3 to 4 runs, and you would hope they'd be up, 4-1, 3-2, whatever it would be after 5 innings. I like those early sprints saying, you know what, I think I know what we're going to get with Brault. I think the bat should be hot, some good hitting conditions. I lean on going with the Milwaukee Brewers over the first 5 innings on the run line there. Obviously, as we know, look, it's hard to take Pittsburgh unless you're just being that total, opposite coin type guy, because heavy betting's coming in on one side. The line is running with that. So, hey, it happens, because we would be surprised that San Francisco Giants, if you said, you know what, Giants going to take 2 of 4 from the Dodgers opening weekend, we would all have laughed, especially after game 1. The same thing when we take a look at the Baltimore Orioles. Oh, my goodness. Will they win 8 games this year because they got bombed game 1? Next thing you know, they're sitting there tied in first place in the AL East. So a lot to be desired here with us, Jason. We both know that. 9-19, 9-20. Chicago White Sox and the Cleveland Indians. Cease and Savale, if we take a look at this game, opened up as a favorite for the Cleveland Indians, -143, -150. This line is now retreating, Jason. We're seeing a lot of 130s across the board at SBRodds.com. If we take a look at some of the XFIPs from last year, both are read generally in the same direction, with Cease 4.42 XFIP and a 4.61 for Savale. Again, wind blowing out 85 miles an hour. The total rising as well, which is a common theme of the day. Open 9.5 offshore. Now, Jason, sitting at 10s.
Yeah, I think this game definitely has an over vibe to it. Dylan Cease had a 5.79 ERA last season, 5.19 FIP, struck out 10 batters per 9 innings, but also walked 4.32 batters per 9 innings and almost left 2 home runs per 9 innings. So, pretty interesting season for him in 14 games, went 4-7. But if you look at his numbers, he wasn't nearly as bad when you take out 2 games that he played against the Twins. So He allowed 13 runs on 17 hits in just 7 innings pitched against the Twins. And then outside of those games, he wasn't nearly that bad. We know how great the Twins were with their power numbers. They were a great team last season. They're going to be great this year as well. Obviously, you saw their offense, how they performed, yesterday during the day. But yeah, Cease's numbers, they were escalated just due to the Twins. But if you take those numbers away, I can't do the math, but I know that the math would definitely be a lot lower without those two Twins performances. Savali, on the other hand, had a 1.09 ERA through 4 games, started at home last season. Yeah, there's also a huge FIP gap. But again, like I said, the huge FIP gap is due to Cease playing against the Twins in those 2 games where he just absolutely got destroyed. For me, I think it's going to be a tight, close game throughout the entire game. The Indians' offense started to finally figure out in their final game of the series, their last one. The White Sox coming off a really poor loss with terrible pitching. This one's tough for me. I think the White Sox definitely have a chance to stay in this game and win it as well. So if I had to lean, I'd look at the White Sox at plus 105 or in that, that underdog range in that plus money. But I wouldn't be surprised, of course, if the Indians won. The FIP for Savali is 3.4 and Cease is 5.19. So yeah, it's scary looking at the FIPs, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe I'm nuts for thinking Cease is not nearly as bad as his numbers because of those 2 Twins games. But yeah, I mean that's how I look at the stats. That's how I'm analyzing them. You could definitely look at it a different way, but for me, I think it's gonna be a tight, close game. And if it's a tight, close game, I'll take the plus money.
No, certainly. That's always the way you look at it, especially early on in the season where some of the statistics may be some outlying conditions there. It's always nice to take those dogs early in the season, even when the public is betting against them. A couple things come up in the chat box. We're in a little bit of overtime here. You guys know we like to get to each and every game and try to get as many as possible that we can get to. We have some people coming up in the chat box. They want to talk a little bit of Atlanta Braves baseball here, Jason. You saw the Atlanta Braves, pulling out a season opening homestand, or I should say road stand victory, actually, for the series itself. Let's take a look and talk a little bit about the Atlanta Braves today. Just trying to pull up some numbers on my docket here. Let's see where they at. Atlanta, there we go. 909, 910, Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Fultonavich and Glasnow going to be on the mound today. Opened up at 8.5, Jason's the total. Staying 8.5 across the board down there in Tampa Bay. If we take a look at the line, not a ton of line movement, but it did open up at minus 141, minus 150 offshore. Now sitting in that mid 140s range. 2 decent pitchers, some flamethrowers going on. Fultonavich and the Braves now going back on the road again to Tampa Bay. What do we see here? Any likes in this game, Jason?
Yeah, I don't have any likes after the Braves just destroyed my Mets last night. So I can't believe you guys are making me talk about the Braves right now after that performance last night. But I mean, let's talk about Glasnow and how he's a potential Cy Young candidate and has the potential to be a Cy Young in the future. As well. I mean, he held opponents to just a 186 batting average with a 1.78 ERA in 12 games started last season. He looked really good at the beginning of the season. And then he had a whip of just 0.89, held Lefties to a 155 batting average. So sorry there, Freddie Freeman and Matt Adams. So yeah, I do like the Rays in this matchup, especially being home. And then on the other hand, the Braves, Fultie's been so inconsistent throughout his entire career. Yeah. Let's go back to his playoff start, right? You remember that when he let up, 8 or 10 runs, whatever that was. So, yeah, Fulte just so inconsistent. I don't know how I can back him and trust him. Had a 4.97 FIP last season. Glasnow again has so much potential. And I'm not saying that Fulte doesn't. Fulte does have a lot of potential. He just has those moments where he just doesn't perform. And so you can't rely on Fulte compared to how you can rely on Glasnow. So, yeah, I'd lean towards the Rays. It might be an official play later on because I did have an official play on the Marlins. Well, now that's scratched, so I need another official play to keep my brain happy. And so the Rays might be one of them. So I'll let people know on Twitter once I make the decision.
It is the middle of the summer. It is the middle of the day, and it is a Monday, but 250 people live have chosen to spend their afternoon with us, Jason. And again, we do appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to talk because me and Jason could call each other off the air and have a lot of fun talking, but we like to include a lot of people. I'm glad you guys have tuned into the chat box. One quick note here on this Atlanta-Tampa Bay game, Jason, which we've seen over the years. Do you put any stock into saying, you know what? This team just won on Sunday Night Baseball late at night, now goes down and flies on the road. And also keep in mind, Tampa Bay already home and waiting. Maybe a little bit of travel lag because I've just seen a couple commenters also in the chat box say, you know what? Maybe a little bit of a tired baseball team with Atlanta.
Yeah, no, I was going to lean towards under 8.5 as well because number one, Glasnow's on the mound. Number two, the Braves just used all their offensive output in that final game. If you look at those first two games versus the Mets when they faced, solid pitchers like DeGrom, like Steven Matz, their offense was not nearly as good, and the Braves almost lost both games. They had a walk-off home run against Diaz in the ninth inning. What's new? I get it, but yeah, they just had one run. They scored the second run in the ninth inning, but their offense was shot in those first two games. They exploded in that third game against Porcello, who's notorious for having a really bad FIP and ERA in the last couple of seasons. But yeah, I mean, under 8.5 does sound really good. I'd be afraid of the Rays offense does, a little bit damage against Folty. That's why I would probably stay away from it and just take the Rays and maybe even look at the Rays team total. But yeah, you can't imagine the Braves hopping from one place to the next place off of Sunday Night Baseball after scoring 14 runs. I can't imagine they're going to have much of an offensive output this one.
Yeah, it should be. And again, the ball doesn't travel all that well down there in Tropicana. Yeah. We'll see if we get a good pitching out performance. But again, leaning on what are we going to get out of Foltynewicz is probably the biggest question mark overall of that game. SoCal Real Seller says the Braves will hit Glasnow. And also Matthew says Boston versus the Mets. Who you got? Let's end it on that part. Before we get to our actual, best plays of the day, bankers that we're going to put in, let's go ahead and talk about that game real quick. The Mets and the Boston Red Sox, who were shocked by the Orioles. Look at this one. Look at this game. Opens at 10.5. Like, oh my goodness, 10.5. Are we playing in Colorado? No, we're not, Jason. Now we're up to 11.5 at Fenway between the Mets and the Boston Red Sox. Waka versus Osich, the lefty on the mound. If we look at the actual odds of the game, opened up roughly around a pick 'em, but now more people leaning towards the Mets as they're coming in here offshore at SBRodds.com, right around minus 117. 11.5 outside cores. Have we lost our mind, Jason?
Of course we have. Have we watched the Mets offense in the first three games? The Mets offense has been atrocious in the first three games. What makes you believe that they're going to perform in this one? Yeah, Josh Osich isn't that great. Obviously, he didn't start a game last season, 57 games, allowed 21 home runs in terms of 21% of home runs on fly balls. Also had a 4.66 ERA and a 4.96 FIP. I do think Michael Wacha does turn around a little bit. I don't know. I don't think he's going to perform like Porcello. I think he'll perform a little bit better in this game. Again, the Red Sox offense has been pretty good as of late, but the Orioles have won 2 out of the 3 against the Red Sox, so kind of confusing with how the Red Sox are playing throughout the first 3 games of the season. I was hoping we'd get an Orioles Marlins World Series series in these first 3 games, but yeah, we're not getting that. But yeah, I would look at under 11.5. That seems crazy for the output the Mets have put out offensively in the first 3 games. And if they do score enough runs, I'll be happy. But I just don't see it happening right now. So yeah, I would lean towards the Mets with Wacha on the mound because Osich hasn't started a game from last season. So yeah, I'm looking at Wacha here and the Mets at minus 115. But again, these are not official plays.
Yeah, also, and we'll take a look at this game. Also, the Mets played last night in New York, so sort of the same travel circumstances as Atlanta. But again, Atlanta goes from New York all the way down to Florida. Just a simple trip up there for the Mets to play Boston, a reeling Boston Red Sox team. Also, the 2 games that you guys have been canceled, 9-11, 9-12, the New York Yankees and the Philadelphia Phillies, and 9-15, 9-16, Baltimore and the Miami Marlins. We'll see when they, get up, or even if the Phillies and the Yankees have to cancel again tomorrow just to make sure everything is straight. There'll be a lot of information and news, so always check out SBRodds.com and certainly sportsbookreview.com for all the latest, as well as SBRpicks.com. So we got a lot going on here. Let's end the show, Jason. This is the time that we like. We like to put money in the people's pocket here. I'm going to play it a little bit close to the vest over the next 2 weeks till some of my statistics come in, but you already heard it. I mean, me and Jason are keyed in for the most part on this Cincinnati and Chicago Cubs game. I like the Cubs team total, and it's a little bit juicy, minus 134.5. I'm going to get my full 9 at-bats in that game. I think they can get the 5. Really good hitting weather. I think they'll go back and forth. And hey, let's get a 5-5 game heading into extra innings. We will all take that and certainly love that. Jason, your best bets of the day, let them have it.
Yeah, so we're going to go with the Brewers at minus 145, and that is my banker for the day. I love the Brewers in this spot over the Pirates. Then we'll also look at over Reds on the team total of 4.5, which I got at minus 114. Again, I would be weary on taking it until you guys know the lineup for the Reds. Make sure that Castellanos and Suarez are in. If not, you can always cash out if you have the right book. And you could also look at SPR to make sure that you find the right ones so that you can cash out if you don't like your play. And also for the day game, I like the Athletics at minus 115 over the Angels. to get that series win. And I might have one more official play later on, but I'm still going through the motions. It will probably be the Rays at -150 or lower at -140. I'm hoping it does go lower. That's one of the reasons why I haven't taken it yet. I do like the Marlins. Obviously, I can't take the Marlins now, so I might have to take another Florida team and hope that they don't get COVID.
No, you're certainly right there. And also keep in mind what Jason is saying. He's very active on Twitter as well. Give him a follow. Get the up-to-date baseball bets there when he puts them out as well. Jason_Radowitz on Twitter. I'm at Rightside VP. We're doing this all baseball season long. Did you miss us on Saturday and Sunday? Well, good news. We're here Monday and through the rest of the week till Friday. Same time each and every day, Monday through Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here on the networks at sportsbookreview.com. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you for all the comments in the chat box. And also keep in mind, SBR Sports Picks on YouTube here. On Thursday, 65.2, now up to 65.4 followers. We're doing it out there. You guys are supporting us, and we really appreciate it. Thanks once again for tuning in to SportsbookReview.com's Major League Baseball show. We'll do it again tomorrow, 1:30. Join us.